OPEC Plus is cutting oil production, which is raising gas prices and screwing over the Biden administration. Biden's getting so desperate to lower gas prices that he's looking to Venezuela for oil. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Remember earlier this summer when U.S. President Joe Biden was taking a lot of flack? I should probably be more specific. Asking if you remember when the president took a lot of flack is like asking if you remember when Lady Gaga wore that weird dress. You're gonna have to narrow it down. I'm talking about when he visited Saudi Arabia. Many criticized him for meeting with a Saudi crown prince, especially after the Saudi royal palace released this photo of the two fist bumping. The crown prince had been trying to rehabilitate his image after U.S. intelligence said he had ordered the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. President Biden had repeatedly said he wouldn't meet with him, but don't worry, because when Biden did meet with the crown prince, he rebuked him for the murder. To be fair to Biden, the U.S.-Saudi relationship isn't just about oil. It's also about security in the Middle East. But it's a lot about oil. Saudi Arabia plays a critical role in OPEC, a group of 13 of the world's major oil exporting nations. When other oil-producing nations join OPEC's actions, that's called OPEC+. OPEC regulates oil supply, which affects global oil prices. So Biden figured he'd pay Saudi Arabia a visit and convince them to increase oil production. I'm sure he asked very nicely. Probably even said please. But Saudi Arabia said no. And now Saudi Arabia is like, okay, I'll do the exact opposite. Wow. Who could have guessed the regime accused of killing and dismembering a journalist for criticizing them would be jerks about something? Under Saudi Arabia's leadership, OPEC Plus has announced the biggest cut to oil production since the start of the pandemic. They're cutting it by 2 million barrels per day, or about 2% of global oil production. Which is annoying, but this is Saudi Arabia, so oil production isn't the worst thing they've cut off. Given this new turn of events, many wonder if Biden's Saudi trip was even worth it. But of course the White House says the trip wasn't a waste. The White House might feel differently if it had to commute to work every day. And the oil production cut starts in November, so those gas prices are looking to go even higher. So why is OPEC Plus doing this? They say the decision was made in anticipation of oil demand dropping as a result of the economy slowing down in China and the West. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, says it's merely reacting to soaring interest rates in the West, making the dollar stronger, which makes oil cheaper. As Saudi Arabia's energy minister put it, we would rather be preemptive than be sorry. Yeah, we can't risk not being able to afford installing a champagne fountain in our 11th royal palace. So Saudi Arabia claims this decision is driven by market forces. But with a cut this big, some analysts say they can't see how it's anything less than a political statement, unless the market is somehow saying, invest in screwing the West. But a political statement? How so? I'll tell you after the break. Welcome back. OPEC Plus is cutting oil production. They say that the decision is due to market forces, but others think it's actually a political decision. People are picking up the idea that this is a rebuke to the West, perhaps even a reaction to Western policies, like the EU pushing ahead with a plan to cap the price of Russian oil over the Ukraine war. And Russia's the one that stands to gain the most from the OPEC Plus oil production cuts. I guess authoritarians that slay together, stay together. According to a Russian-based brokerage firm, Russia won't have to cut anything. It is positive news for Russian oil firms, which will benefit from higher prices while keeping output steady. High oil prices enable Russia to refill its coffers for its continued invasion of Ukraine and limit the impact of U.S. and EU sanctions. Because of all this, the White House has accused OPEC Plus of aligning with Russia. Although there's no proof OPEC countries are doing this to make things better for Russia. That could just be a side effect of what OPEC is doing for its own good. But the production cuts aren't doing the U.S. any favors, that's for sure. Some call it a slap on the Biden administration's face by OPEC+. Another way to put it is that OPEC+ is spitting in the face of Joe Biden, which is mean, because the only thing Biden wants in his face is delicious, delicious ice cream. Rising gas prices have been a thorn in Biden's side throughout his presidency, even before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Rising gas prices are kind of a thorn in every president's side, because most people think they all have a lever they use to control gas prices, which is ridiculous. It's a dial. And with midterm elections coming soon, Biden needs to be able to say, I did that to declining gas prices, not price increases. According to a U.S. official, the White House is having a spasm and panicking. And that's only natural. After all, Team Biden is starting to look a bit less unified. And right before midterms, Democrats are furious. Many are questioning America's ties to Saudi Arabia. Some say we should stop supplying the Saudis with weapons. And others say, wait, we were supplying them with weapons? What the heck? But I mean, we're also trying to renegotiate a nuclear deal with Iran, so... House Democrats have already introduced a bill to remove U.S. troops from Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Even a bill called the No Oil Producing and Exporting Cartels Act is on the table, aka the NOPEC Act. And yes, that acronym has big no-Obama energy. But considering this massive oil cut, I'll take any energy I can get. The NOPEC bill is not new. Versions of it have floated around Congress for more than 2 decades, without success. But it's getting renewed attention. NOPEC would allow the U.S. government to sue OPEC members for manipulating the energy market and bring some of that sweet, sweet oil cheddar back to the United States. The Biden administration has hinted that it might back the bill, though that's not guaranteed. In the meantime, Biden will release 10 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve next month. This is on top of the 180 million he already released. He's tossing out barrels quicker than Donkey Kong. This has shrunk the U.S. emergency oil supply to a 40-year low. Problems on top of problems. Biden is very disappointed with how things are going.
What's your reaction to the OPEC constitution?
Disappointment, and we're looking at what alternatives we may have.
What are the alternatives? Hiring Doc Brown to give us the designs for his car that runs on garbage? Nope. According to the Wall Street Journal, the alternative is Venezuela. Yeah, more after the break. Welcome back. Democrats are furious with OPEC Plus cutting oil production, and Biden is eyeing alternatives to OPEC oil. His administration says it makes a point of putting human rights at the center of U.S. foreign policy. And what better way to do that than by relying on a sanctioned authoritarian government like Venezuela? That's like a cruelty-free cupcake shop getting all their ingredients from Jeffrey Dahmer. This wouldn't be the first time the Biden administration was tempted by Venezuelan oil. Venezuela has some of the world's largest oil reserves. Back in March, the U.S. had to pause talks with Venezuela after political blowback. But an oil deal was still on the table. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Biden administration is preparing to scale down sanctions to allow Chevron Corp to resume pumping oil there, paving the way for a potential reopening of U.S. and European markets to oil exports from Venezuela. In exchange, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro would resume suspended talks with the country's opposition to discuss the terms for holding free and fair presidential elections in 2024. I assume those talks will start with Maduro saying, "You must be truly desperate to come to me for help." U.S. officials said details are still under discussion because it is contingent on Mr. Maduro's top aides resuming talks with the opposition in good faith. An authoritarian acting in good faith with its opponents. That's like trusting Jeffrey Dahmer to go vegan. Yes, 2 Jeffrey Dahmer references in 1 episode. Blame Netflix. The Biden administration denies that it's planning to change its Venezuela sanctions policy. And maybe it isn't. Maybe it hopes to get Venezuelan oil some other way. The problem is that the Biden administration is all too willing to encourage more oil supply anywhere except in the U.S. At a time when supply chains and world energy ties are being disrupted, the U.S. could be building up its domestic energy production. But the Biden administration and Democrats are too fixated on clean energy initiatives at the expense of anything related to fossil fuels, at least at home. That's like saying, we need to protect the environment, but if they want to destroy it, that's fine with us. Now, I don't have anything against clean energy, but the Biden administration has seriously throttled U.S. energy production thanks to this fixation. The Biden administration has proposed or finalized regulations that restrict nearly every aspect of the oil industry: financing and private sector investment, exploration and production, pipeline construction and operation, and consumer use. Yet somehow it's fine with demanding countries like Saudi Arabia and Venezuela increase production, all in the name of combating climate change. In other words, producing energy in Texas and Alaska is a huge no-no. But Venezuela and Saudi Arabia don't count. Just because they're far away from home doesn't mean the world will be less affected by their oil production. In fact, the opposite is true. For example, according to the World Bank's 2022 Global Gas Flaring Tracker Report, the U.S. is much cleaner than Venezuela when it comes to gas flaring. Probably because when you don't even care at all about human rights, you're not bothered by gas flaring. Gas flaring is when oil refineries burn excess natural gas to depressurize equipment. If Biden really cared about climate change and secure energy production, he would be relying more on U.S. energy production than on countries that have worse environmental regulations. Which is why some say the overall Biden policy on fossil fuels is incoherent. Biden? Being incoherent? No. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. And if you like the show, remember that we rely mainly on direct support from viewers like you. All it takes is as little as $1 per episode over on our crowdfunding website, Patreon. Visit patreon.com/America Uncovered for more. Click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.